Damn it, Steven. That's a hell of an idea for a video. Welcome back to the channel, FlatsClass YouTube fans. And today's video is actually going to be about bass baits that you can use in salt water and be uber successful. Now, this inspiration came actually through a fan and a fellow guide, Captain Stephen Fluke Jr. up there in the Carolinas. And I was watching one of his TikTok videos, and he mentioned something like this. And I thought to myself, well, I do this all the time. I mean, we use bass baits all the time. Now, I'm not going to talk about everyone. I'm just going to talk about 5 or 6 of them. So I'm going to go in the shop and start getting these things collected up. You go check out this B-roll action on the water, and I'll be right back. There were 2 good ones there. The two smaller ones went back to the left. When you guys were kind of preoccupied. That one there, boy, nice. Him and the big one, they kept going down the shoreline.
Bubba, you need to get one of these. Redfish are just fine. They pull like fucking bulldozers.
I'm gonna put the micro down. And I'm going to jump down to help. Put this up here. Get my handy dandy little net here. Not that you're bragging. Reel down, get your rod tip closer to the water, and you'll have more control.
He's nice.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. That's a good.
Wow. Nice fish. Nice fish.
Eat that little bait.
Sweet fish. Alright, brother. There you go. Oh shit, it's cold. Water's cold too.
Water is cold.
Tell me when you're ready. You ready yet? Yeah, he's ready. Oh, that's nice. That's sweet. That was fun.
Blowing like the devil outside today. All right, let's talk a little bit about these crossover baits. These bass baits that work very well for inshore anglers. And that's kind of the category we're talking about, crossover baits. Now, there's going to be some obvious crossover baits that I'm going to eliminate because they'd be too obvious, and many of you will mention them in the comments. Spoons, they catch bass too. Swim baits like 3 and 4 and 5 inch paddle tails that you could use for both. Fluke style baits, Texas rig, we know you can catch both on those. Those are the innocuous style baits. But let's talk about some of them that are purely bass baits that work. First one that comes to mind is the lipped jerk bait, the suspending lipped jerk bait. Now, this lure catches bass, but Mirrolure made this lure to catch trout. And if you've been a fan of FlatsClass television for one of the 17 seasons or all of them, you've seen Ed Kabler and myself catch big speckled trout on these plugs. If you're a fan of YouTube, you've seen me catch snook on these plugs. So I'd say number one would be the suspending jerkbait. But I mean, it's just one of those ultra versatile baits that you can throw long casts, work anything from 3 foot to probably, if you're a real long caster and you reel it the right way, you could probably get it down to almost 7 foot of water. So very versatile bait, and I'd absolutely say one of my favorites. So that's bait number one. Bait number two that I'll pull out of my BUZBE box would be the spinnerbait. That's right. You can catch redfish, and at night you can catch snook on a traditional spinner-armed, here you go, take a good look at that, spinnerbait. I use this quite often when I'm fishing areas in Northeast Florida. I use it when I'm fishing in the Big Bend area of Florida. I can even use it here if it's low light, and it works well. Now, you've seen me do television shows on these baits out there in Louisiana, but I can tell you right now, this will catch black drum and redfish naturally. But I have caught snook on this bait. I have caught speckled trout on this bait. And it's probably one of the most reliable, freshwater bass baits that you can utilize. Actually, I cut it off one of my bass rods out there. But I'd say number two, all in all, would have to be the spinnerbait. Now, we'll move on to number three next. Number three would have to be Ned rigs. That's what you saw in the video. Ned rigs, they just simply work. It's a system, and there's lots of different shapes. Probably one of my favorite shapes would be this one right here, which is the ticklers. But I use them in the finesse TRD. I use them in the TRD craws. I use them in a lot of those style baits. The number one thing, or you're looking at baits that are 3 inches or smaller, generally 2 3/4, and they're on very light mushroom jig heads. So these jig heads weigh anywhere from 1/10 of an ounce in most of the shallow water scenarios down to 1/20th of an ounce, believe it or not. Now, if you needed to fish a little bit of flow, a little bit of current in a deeper part of the creek, you could upscale it and put 1/4 or 1/6 of an ounce and still work it. But typically anything under 1/8 in weight is ideal for these things. And when fish like redfish are really persnickety, they're not wanting to eat, this is my go-to bait. I mean, definitely, especially in clear water. And it all started in the Midwest catching bass. So that would be my third most popular bass bait that catches inshore fish. Now let's talk about this one. Number four. I'm pulling this one out of the BUZBE box. This one is something you saw me catch cobia on, but it catches everything. Big speckled trout, redfish for sure, and even snook. And it's one of the all-time best bass baits that I even got started on, cut my teeth on when I was a kid. And that is any of the soft plastic or soft bait worm profiles. This happens to be the Fatty Z. Luke Clausen, who's a ZMan pro, came up with this. But I love this particular profile. But any of the worm style baits, slender, soft stick baits, work extremely well when you're targeting saltwater fish, because it could be a ballyhoo, could be a needlefish, could be a marine worm. All of those are on the menu for saltwater fish, and they're definitely on the menu for bass. So I would say pretty confidently, if you're throwing a worm look, you're probably catching both species, both fresh and salt. Let's move on to the next one. All right, this would be number five. Number five is a bait that I catch triple tail, cobia, redfish, black drum, and bass. And that would be Crossstyle baits. If you like Crossstyle baits that look like crabs and you swim them, whether you put a jig head on them, Texas rig them, In some cases, you could probably Carolina rig them. They will simply fish well for both species. Probably one of the best crossover baits I've ever used. And I'll give you a little bonus on this one. I catch a lot of speckled trout on frog baits too. So if you took a frog and rigged it on an unweighted rigging hook, for those of you that don't know your bass rigging it, and roll it over the surface so it almost looks like a buzzbait coming, you will catch the fire out of speckled trout certain times of year. But the soft craw profile, these soft baits, this one happens to be the Turbo Craws from ZMan, and I might have the package here, I do. These have been go-tos for me for a long time, and they catch plenty of fish. Just get a little confidence in them, and I guarantee you, you'll be catching both bass and all those inshore fish. Let's move on. Number 6. Number 6, in my opinion, would be a chatterbait. The chatterbait, let me get it in a fashion where I can hold it for you. The chatterbait is one of those types of baits that works well for me, especially in stained water. If you're fishing heavy vegetation for bass, if you're fishing turbid water on the outside, you're going to notice that you're going to catch plenty of redfish. I catch black drum on this bait. I've also caught snook on this bait. And I found out this past weekend while filming with Dan Benson from Power Pole that it's one of their best baits for catching triple tail. That's right. When they'll hit nothing else, they'll hit a chatterbait. Now I have a longer trailer on this one. This is the ZMan darters on here. But I usually like swim bait trailers on these chatterbaits, and they do a good job of finding fish. And on windy days like today, cloudy days, that's when a chatterbait just rocks. You're not only going to catch all the bass you want in the head river or the lakes, but you're going to be able to go on the outside and you're going to catch some pretty nice fish on chatterbaits. I like chatterbaits. They're weight forward. They expand my strike zone by quite a bit. And ever since ZMan came out with it, I've been working on, man, I love one that is just built saltwater tough, has a little smaller blade, maybe even one of the Invisib blades on it, so it's not as shiny, but something that will give it that sound, vibration, and you still get that larger profile they can see from a distance. But I'd have to say, definitely number 6, chatterbait. We're going to talk about one more because I just did a YouTube video on it not too long ago, and it was hyper successful, and it's going to be something a lot of you Midwest guys recognize right off the bat. I bet you can guess. Number 7. Midwest, I gave it away, huh? Smallmouth. Tube baits. Tube baits are definitely an incredible bait, especially for redfish and bass. When I think of tube bait fishing, and this goes back to my tournament days as a pro red fisherman, I don't know if there was a better tough bite bait for me other than a tube bait. The tube has a hollow core to it so you can add scent inside. Looks a lot like a shrimp. And in these ZMan Elastec materials, they stand up and those tentacles just kind of move and articulate, and it just makes it just so easy to fool redfish, making it think it's a shrimp, or to fool bass, making it think it's a freshwater shrimp or a craw or some type of creature that they want to bust off the bottom. But when I got to move something slow, I'm moving a tube bait. And this is the ZMan Easy Tube, and it's just one of those get you baits for sure. If you like these type of videos, revealing stuff that's helping you catch more fish, share it with your friends, please, and hit that subscribe button. I want to make FlatsClass YouTube the inshore authority for all of you to catch more fish. And really, that's my job. All right, on a windy day like this, I'm probably going to go do a few more videos. Until next time, Captain CA signing off.